My husband squeezed my hand while I lay dying in the dirt, looking into my eyes with the same tenderness he used when we exchanged vows 7 years ago. He told me he loved me. Then he leaned in close and whispered that he was the one who poisoned my wine. He thought he was watching the light fade from my eyes forever. He didn't know that 2 weeks later, I would be sitting across from him in a bank vault, watching him sign his life away, waiting for the exact moment to let him know ghosts can bite back. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I sat at my vanity, staring at my reflection, while Elias paced behind me in the bedroom. He was checking his phone again. It was a nervous, twitchy movement that I had seen 1,000 times in the last few months, but tonight, on our 7th anniversary, it felt particularly insulting. I watched him through the mirror. The blue light of the screen illuminated the sharp jawline I had fallen in love with, but it also highlighted the sheen of sweat on his forehead. He hissed a curse under his breath and shoved the phone into his pocket when he caught me looking. I turned around, smoothing the fabric of the plum-colored silk dress that cost more than his first car. "Is everything okay?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice light, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Elias forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. He walked over and placed his hands on my shoulders, his thumbs digging into my skin with a little too much pressure. "Everything is perfect, Kendra," he said. "Just work stuff. You know how needy clients can be." I knew he was lying. I had built a multi-million-dollar empire of luxury-assisted living facilities by reading people, by knowing when a potential investor was bluffing or when a family member was hiding guilt. My husband was hiding something massive. I had seen the notifications lighting up his phone late at night, glowing red with urgent warnings. I had seen the way he flinched when the doorbell rang, but I loved him. I loved him with a desperate, pathetic blindness that made me ignore the warning signs because I didn't want to shatter the illusion of our perfect life. "You look breathtaking," he said, leaning down to kiss my neck. "Thank you, baby," I replied. I touched his hand, trying to draw comfort from his touch, but his skin was cold and clammy. He pulled away too quickly, checking his watch. "We should go," he said. "The reservation is at 8, and I don't want to be late. Tonight has to be perfect." He sounded desperate, not romantic. I stood up and grabbed my clutch, pushing down the nagging voice in the back of my head that screamed something was wrong. Elias had been acting erratic for 6 months. He had separate bank accounts I wasn't allowed to see, claiming he wanted financial independence for his consulting business, which I knew was barely breaking even. I had let him have his secrets because I was the one with the real money, the real power, and I didn't want to emasculate him. I didn't know then that his secrets had a price tag of over $500,000 in gambling debts. I didn't know he was juggling 5 different payday loan apps just to keep the sharks away from our door. And I certainly didn't know that tonight he wasn't planning to celebrate our marriage. He was planning to liquidate it. The restaurant was a cathedral of glass and gold, perched on the waterfront with a view of the city skyline that looked like spilled diamonds on black velvet. Hand-blown chandeliers cast a soft, forgiving light over the ivory marble floors. It was the kind of place where the silence was heavy and expensive, broken only by the clinking of silver and the murmur of deals being made. Elias had chosen our table specifically. It was in a secluded corner, draped in crisp white linen and adorned with fresh orchids. He pulled out my chair with the practiced grace of a man playing a role. "To us," he said, raising his water glass. "To 7 years. To us," I echoed. The waiter, a man in a flawless suit who looked like he knew more secrets than a priest, brought our starter, jumbo tiger prawns with edible flowers and truffle oil. It was exquisite, but the food tasted like ash in my mouth. Elias was too manic. He was talking too fast, joking about things that weren't funny, and sweating through his dress shirt. He ordered the wine without asking me, a bold French red from a 2015 vintage. When the sommelier poured it, the liquid looked dark, almost like blood in the dim light. I need to use the powder room, I said, standing up. Take your time, my love, Elias said. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the wine bottle. I walked toward the restrooms, my heels clicking on the marble. I stayed in there for maybe 3 minutes, checking my makeup and taking deep breaths, trying to convince myself that his anxiety was just about making the night special. When I returned to the table, Elias was sitting perfectly still. His hands were in his lap. The wine glasses were full. He looked up at me, and for a split second I saw pure terror in his eyes before he masked it with a smile. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said. "Just needed to freshen up." He raised his glass. "To always being together," he said. I clinked my glass against his. "To us." I took a sip. The wine was rich, heavy with notes of black currant and vanilla, masking anything else that might have been hidden inside it. I watched him over the rim of my glass. He didn't drink. He just watched me swallow, his eyes tracking the movement of my throat. "Aren't you drinking?" I asked. "In a minute," he said. "I just want to savor the moment." I took another sip, then another. The waiter brought the main course. Wagyu beef for him, roasted branzino for me. We ate in a stilted silence. 20 minutes passed, then 30. That was when the world tilted. It started as a dull throb in my temples, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. I rubbed my forehead, thinking it was just the stress, or maybe the wine was stronger than I was used to. But then the room spun. The chandeliers smeared into streaks of light. My stomach gave a violent lurch, and a cold sweat broke out across my skin instantly. "Kendra?" Elias asked. His voice sounded far away, like he was speaking through a long tunnel. "Are you okay?" I don't know," I stammered. "I feel dizzy." I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly against the china, drawing stares from the nearby tables. Nausea rolled over me in a suffocating wave. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. "I think I'm going to be sick," I whispered. Elias was at my side instantly. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Let's get you some fresh air," he said. "Maybe the seafood didn't agree with you." He signaled for the check, throwing a credit card onto the table. My credit card, I realized dimly. He helped me stand, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I stumbled, leaning heavily against him. He practically dragged me toward the exit, his movements jerky and urgent. "Hang in there, honey," he muttered. "I'll get you to the hospital. Everything will be fine." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this was just food poisoning or an allergic reaction. But as he shoved me into the passenger seat of our car and buckled me in, I saw his face in the light of the dashboard. He wasn't looking at me with concern. He was looking at the road with a grim, focused determination. My breathing was becoming shallow, fast, and ragged. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt swollen and heavy. "Elias, hospital," I managed to choke out. "Right now," he said. "Just hold on." He drove fast, weaving through the city traffic. I closed my eyes, fighting the darkness that was creeping in from the edges of my vision. I focused on the turns, trying to keep track of where we were going. Right onto Main, left onto the expressway. But then the car slowed down. The smooth hum of the tires on asphalt changed to the crunch of gravel. The ride became bumpy, jarring my sick stomach. I forced my eyes open. There were no streetlights here, no hospital signs, just trees, tall and menacing, pressing in on both sides of a narrow dirt road. "Elias." "Where are we?" I whispered. "This isn't the way." "I know," he replied. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the voice of a man checking items off a grocery list. He didn't look at me. He just kept driving deeper into the woods, into the darkness. "Stop," I gasped. "Please stop." He ignored me. We drove for another 10 minutes until the road ended in a small clearing surrounded by dense brush. Elias killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and my own ragged breathing. He turned off the headlights. We were plunged into absolute blackness. "Get out," he said. I couldn't move. My limbs felt disconnected from my brain. The toxin, because I knew now, with a horrifying clarity, that it was a toxin, was shutting down my nervous system. "What?" I croaked. I said, "Get out of the car." He unbuckled his seatbelt and walked around to my side. He opened the door, letting in the damp, earthy smell of the forest. He reached in, grabbed my arm, and yanked me out. I had no strength to resist. I fell onto the wet ground, my knees slamming into the mud. "Why?" I sobbed, tears mixing with the dirt on my face. "Elias, I love you. I gave you everything. That's exactly why," he said. He stood over me, silhouetted against the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. He looked like a giant, a monster wearing my husband's clothes. "You gave me everything except the right to control it," he spat, his voice dripping with 7 years of suppressed venom. "Your prenups, your lawyers, your constant supervision. I'm tired of being an accessory to your successful life, Kendra." He crouched down so his face was inches from mine. I could smell his cologne, the same scent he wore on our wedding day. "Do you know how much debt I'm in?" he asked conversationally. "Over $500,000. Gambling, bad investments, life, and you have millions sitting in accounts I can't touch." He laughed, a cold, dry sound. "I've been planning this for weeks. I researched toxins. I found something colorless, tasteless, something that mimics a severe allergic reaction or heart failure. It's a thiophosphate compound, pesticide. You have maybe 30 minutes left before your lungs stop working." My mind was screaming, but my body was paralyzed. I stared at him, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal. "Kaylee will get her penthouse now," he continued. "She's young, she's 22. She looks at me like I'm a god, not a trophy husband. She dreams of owning a cafe. With your money, I can give her that. I can give her everything. Kaylee, a mistress." The name hung in the air like smoke. "I found your will, Kendra," he whispered. "You wrote it a year ago after your mom died. You left everything to me. Sole heir. No charities, just me." He stood up and brushed invisible dust off his suit pants. "You were just a convenient option," he said. "A wealthy, lonely woman who fell for pretty words. I never loved you, not for a single day." He nudged me with his polished shoe, rolling me onto my back. I stared up at the canopy of leaves, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "Goodbye, Kendra. I can't say it was a pleasure." He walked back to the car. The door slammed. The engine roared to life. He turned the car around, the headlights sweeping over me for a brief, blinding second, and then he drove away. He left me there in the dirt, alone, to die. The silence of the woods returned, heavy and indifferent. I lay there, feeling the cold seep into my bones. The pain in my abdomen was excruciating, a fire that was slowly consuming me from the inside out. My vision was tunneling. I could feel my heart rate slowing down, each beat a struggle. I thought about my company. I thought about the investors I had fought to win over. I thought about the irony of it all. I was a woman who controlled thousands of lives, who managed millions of dollars, and I was going to die in a ditch because I trusted a man with a nice smile. I closed my eyes, preparing for the end. I apologized to my mother in my head. I was sorry I had been so stupid. Then I heard it. The hum of an engine, tires crunching on gravel. It wasn't Elias coming back. The sound was different, smoother, deeper, a high-end engine. I forced my eyes open. Twin beams of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees. The car was slowing down. It stopped 10 yards away. A door opened. Footsteps. "Lord, what happened here?" A voice shouted. It was a man's voice, sharp, authoritative. "Ma'am? Are you alive?" He ran toward me. I tried to lift my hand, but it just twitched in the mud. He knelt beside me, turning a flashlight on my face. I squinted against the glare. He was in his early 40s, handsome in a rugged, tired way. I recognized him instantly, even through the haze of poison. Cale Sterling, my biggest business rival, the owner of the Sterling Medical Group. We had fought over territory for 3 years. He had tried to buy me out twice. I had crushed his last expansion bid in court. Cale? I wheezed. Kendra? His eyes went wide. Kendra Thorne. What the hell? Poisoned, I managed to whisper. Husband. Cale didn't ask questions. He didn't waste time with shock. His face shifted into professional mode instantly. He pressed 2 fingers to my neck, checking my pulse. Weak and thready, he muttered. Pupils dilated, neurotoxin symptoms. He pulled out his phone and hit a speed dial. Mom, it's me, he barked into the phone. I need you at the clinic. Now, toxicology protocol. I'm bringing in a patient. Critical. Poisoning. It's Kendra Thorne. Yes, that Kendra Thorne. Just get the anti-venom and the gastric lavage ready. I'm 15 minutes out. He hung up and scooped me into his arms. I felt weightless. He carried me to his black SUV and laid me in the back seat, covering me with his blazer. Stay with me, Kendra, he said, jumping into the driver's seat. Don't you dare die on me. Not like this. He gunned the engine, and the car tore out of the woods. As the trees blurred past the window, I looked at the back of my enemy's head and realized the twisted joke of the universe. The man I loved had killed me, and the man I fought was trying to save me. Then the darkness finally took me. I woke up to the smell of rubbing alcohol and the steady, rhythmic beeping of a machine that I realized with a jolt was monitoring my own heart. The light was blinding, a stark, clinical white that felt like it was drilling into my skull. I tried to lift my hand to shield my eyes, but my arm was heavy, anchored by a plastic tube taped to the crook of my elbow. Don't try to move yet, a voice said. It was female, firm, and commanded authority. I blinked, trying to clear the grit from my eyes. A woman with silver hair cut in a sharp bob was standing over me, checking a hanging IV bag. She wore a white coat and looked at me with eyes that were clinical but not unkind. I recognized her from industry galas. Dr. Eris Sterling, Cale's mother, the most terrifying toxicologist in the state. Where am I? I croaked. My throat felt like I had swallowed broken glass. You are at the Sterling Private Clinic, Dr. Eris said, adjusting a dial on the monitor, and you are extremely lucky to be alive, Kendra. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little holes to keep from screaming. The memories came rushing back like a mudslide. The wine, the woods, Elias, the way he smiled when he told me I was going to die. I felt a sob rise in my chest, but I pushed it down. I couldn't break apart. Not here, not in front of the competition. What was it? I asked. Thiophosphate, she replied, pulling a stool over and sitting beside me. Industrial-grade pesticide, usually used for crop dusting. It shuts down the central nervous system. If my son hadn't brought you in when he did, your respiratory system would have collapsed completely within another 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I closed my eyes. 10 minutes was the difference between life and death. 10 minutes was the margin of error in Elias's plan. Does he know? I whispered. No one knows you are here, she said. You are not in the system. We are off the grid. She checked my pulse, her fingers cool against my skin. You've been unconscious for 2 days, she added. 2 days. The words hit me harder than the poison. 2 days meant Elias had already reported me missing. 2 days meant the clock was ticking on whatever endgame he had planned. I tried to sit up, panic flaring in my chest, but Dr. Eris pushed me back down with a gentle but unyielding hand. Lie down, she ordered. The toxin is out of your system, but your organs are still recovering from the shock. You need rest, not adrenaline. I wanted to argue, but my body betrayed me. I sank back into the pillows, feeling tears leak from the corners of my eyes. I was alive, but I was a ghost. The door opened an hour later, and Kyle walked in. He looked exhausted. He was wearing the same clothes he had on in the woods, his dress shirt wrinkled and stained with mud on the sleeve. He held 2 cups of coffee, and when he saw I was awake, his shoulders slumped in visible relief. "You're back," he said, setting the cups on the bedside table. I looked at him. This was the man I had spent 3 years demonizing in boardrooms. I had called him ruthless, arrogant, and a corporate shark, and now he was standing there, looking like he hadn't slept in 48 hours because he was worried about me. The humiliation was a physical weight in my stomach. "Why?" I asked. My voice was stronger now, but still raspy. "Why did you help me, Kyle? We're enemies." He pulled up a chair and sat down, blowing on his coffee. "We're competitors, Kendra, not enemies. There's a difference. And I'm not the kind of man who leaves a woman dying in a ditch, no matter what her market share is." I looked away, staring at the IV tube. "I owe you my life," I said bitterly. "That's a hell of a debt. Consider it a professional courtesy," he said dryly. "Besides, I take that shortcut through the woods to avoid the highway traffic on Friday nights. Pure dumb luck." He took a sip of coffee and his expression hardened. "We need to talk about what happened. You said husband, you said poisoned." I nodded slowly. The shame of saying it out loud was almost worse than the act itself. To admit that I, the woman who vetted every contract and every employee with a microscope, had let a murderer into my bed. "He put poison in my wine," I said, forcing the words out. "He told me he did it. He told me he's in debt. He has a mistress. He wants my money." Cale didn't look surprised. He just looked angry. "I did some digging while you were out," he said, quietly. "Your husband reported you missing yesterday morning. He put on quite a show for the police. Tears. Shaking hands. He told them you got sick at dinner, made him stop the car, wandered into the woods, and vanished." I felt a surge of nausea. It was exactly what he had rehearsed. "He thinks I'm dead," I said. "He thinks you're dead or dying," Cale corrected. "And right now, that is our only advantage. If he finds out you survived, he'll run. Or he'll try to finish the job." I looked at my hands. They were shaking. "I need to call the police," I said. "And say what?" Cale asked. "That he poisoned you? Do you have the glass? Do you have the bottle?" I froze. "No," I whispered. "Then it's your word against the grieving husband," Cale said. "And without physical evidence, a good lawyer will tear you apart. He'll say you're hallucinating. He'll say you had a breakdown. We need proof, Kendra. Irrefutable proof." "The proof is at the restaurant," I said, sitting up despite the dizziness. "He did it at the table. He spiked my glass while I was in the restroom. They have cameras. I've seen them." Cale pulled his phone out of his pocket. He looked hesitant, which scared me more than his anger. "I thought of that," he said. "I have a contact at the security firm that handles that restaurant. I asked him to pull the footage from Friday night." "And?" I asked, my heart hammering. He shook his head. "The system they use is a rolling loop," Cale said. "High definition, massive data files. To save server space, it overwrites itself every 48 hours, unless an incident is manually flagged." I stared at him, trying to process the math. Friday night. It was now Monday morning. "It's gone?" I whispered. "It's gone, Kendra." My guy checked the server logs. The footage from Friday night was overwritten 6 hours ago. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was it. That was the smoking gun. I had clung to the idea of that video like a lifeline while I lay in the dark. I had imagined the police watching Elias pour the vial, the handcuffs clicking shut. I slammed my fist against the mattress. "Damn it!" I screamed. The monitor beeped frantically as my heart rate spiked. "We missed it," Cale said quietly. "We were too focused on keeping you alive." "So I have nothing," I said, my voice trembling. "I have a story that sounds like a bad movie plot and zero evidence." "He wins. He actually wins." "No," Kyle said, leaning forward. "He doesn't win. He just made it harder. But criminals are arrogant, Kendra. especially ones who think they've already gotten away with it. He kept the poison somewhere. He has a paper trail. He has the mistress. We just have to find it. But I can't look for it, I said. I'm dead. Exactly, Cale said. You're a ghost, and ghosts can go places the living can't. That night, the recovery took a turn. Doctor. Eris explained it was a secondary metabolic reaction as the last of the toxins left my liver, but it felt like I was being burned alive. My temperature spiked to 102. I was shivering so hard my teeth chattered, but my skin felt like it was on fire. In the delirium of the fever, I wasn't in the clinic anymore. I was back in our living room 3 years ago. Elias was standing by the fireplace holding a bank statement I had left on the counter. He wasn't yelling. He never yelled. He was doing that thing where he looked wounded like a kicked puppy. "You don't trust me?" he said, his voice echoing in my fever dream. "I just wanted to move some funds to an investment account to surprise you. Why do you have to micromanage everything, Kendra? It makes me feel so small." In the dream, I felt the guilt wash over me, thick and suffocating, the guilt he had planted and watered for years. "I'm sorry, baby," Dream Kendra said. "I'm just used to handling it." He smiled then, that toxic, sweet smile. "It's okay," he said, hugging me. "I know you're a control freak. It's part of your charm. But maybe just let me handle the little things, okay? You work so hard, you look so tired. Let me take the burden off you." I woke up gasping, my hospital gown soaked in sweat. The room was dark. Kyle was asleep in the chair in the corner, his head resting on his chest. I stared at him, my breathing ragged. It wasn't love. It was never love. It was a long con. Every argument about my controlling nature, every comment about my stress levels, every time he told me I needed to relax, it was all grooming. He was training me to let go of the reins so he could wrap them around my neck. The realization didn't make me sad anymore. It made me cold. The fever broke, leaving behind a clarity that was sharp as a diamond. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to destroy him. By the next morning, I was weak but functional. I asked Cale for a laptop, not mine, which was probably in police custody or with Elias, but a clean one, a burner. He brought me an old tablet from his office. I sat up in bed, propped by pillows, and began the digital excavation of my life. I couldn't log into my main bank accounts without triggering a 2-factor authentication alert on my phone, which Elias surely had. But I had a secret. Years ago, when I first started my company, I set up a mirrored backup for my personal email, a God mode account that forwarded copies of everything to a secure server. I had done it for corporate security, but I had linked my personal notifications to it as well. Elias didn't know it existed. I logged in. My hands hovered over the keyboard. There were hundreds of unread emails, condolences from friends who had heard I was missing, alerts from the security system at the house showing the police arriving. But I filtered them out. I searched for transfer and withdrawal. There it was. The notification was dated yesterday, a transfer request from our joint checking account, the one with the operating capital for the house. $20,000 moved to an external account I didn't recognize. "He's not wasting time," I muttered. I scrolled further back, looking for the red flags I had ignored. I found an email from a storage facility called City Safe. It was a receipt for a monthly rental of Unit 402. The billing address wasn't our home. It was a P.O. box in Elias's name. I stared at the screen. We had a 3-car garage and a basement. We didn't need a storage unit. "Kyle," I said. He looked up from his phone. "Look at this." I turned the tablet toward him. "City Safe Storage," I said. "He's been paying for it for 6 months. It's 20 miles from our house, in the industrial district. Why would a man who lives in a mansion need a storage unit in the slums?" "To hide things he doesn't want his wife to see," Cale said, reading the receipt. "This is it," I said. "The gambling debts, the loans, that's just money. But a secret room? That's where he keeps the life he's hiding. That's where the evidence is. We need to get into that unit, I said. Cale stood up and paced the small room. We can't just walk in, he said. It's in his name. We'd need a warrant or a key, and we can't get a warrant without probable cause, which we don't have because the video is gone. Then we break in, I said. Cale stopped pacing and looked at me. Excuse me? We break in, I repeated. Or I do. I'm technically dead, remember? You said it yourself. Ghosts can go places the living can't. And you can barely walk to the bathroom, Kendra, Cale said, crossing his arms. You are not rappelling into a storage unit Mission Impossible style. Then you do it, I shot back. He laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. I'm a CEO, Kendra. I run a medical conglomerate. I don't commit burglary on Tuesday afternoons. You saved my life, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You dragged me out of the woods. You are already involved, Cale. If Elias finds out I'm alive, he comes for me. If he gets away with this, he wins. Are you really going to let a man who poisons women walk away with my company? I knew which button to push. Cale hated losing. He hated injustice. But mostly, he hated the idea of someone destroying a business built on hard work. He stared at me for a long moment. I saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was weighing the risk against the moral imperative. If we do this, he said slowly, and that is a massive if, we do it my way. No reckless heroics. We need to know what we're looking for. The vial, I said. The bottle he used to poison me. He wouldn't throw it in a public trash can. He's arrogant, but he's not sloppy. He'd want to dispose of it somewhere total or keep it. Or it's at the house, Cale countered. Maybe, I said, but the police have been at the house. He wouldn't risk leaving it there. The storage unit is his safe space. It's the only place he thinks is invisible. Kyle sighed and rubbed his temples. Okay, he said. Okay. I have a guy. Private investigator. Used to be a locksmith. He owes me a favor. We don't break in. We pick the lock. We look for the vial. If we find it, we take it to the police. And if we don't, I asked. Then we go to the house, Cale said grimly, and we pray to God he hasn't flushed it down the toilet. He walked to the door. Rest, he commanded. I'm going to make some calls. And Kendra? Yes? Welcome to the criminal underworld. Try not to enjoy it. He walked out. I lay back against the pillows, listening to the beep of the monitor. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the cold, hard engine of calculation. Elias had tried to kill the wife who loved him. He had no idea he had just created the enemy who would bury him. The door to my hospital room opened, admitting a woman who looked like she was carved out of granite. She wore a charcoal suit that had seen better days and an expression that said she had seen everything else. Cale introduced her as Detective Amara Avery, a contact from the district attorney's office who worked off the books when the law moved too slowly. I tried to sit up straighter, smoothing the thin hospital blanket over my legs. I needed to look like a CEO, not a victim, but the IV lines made that difficult. Detective Avery pulled up a chair and looked at me for a long, uncomfortable minute. So you are the dead woman, she said flatly. I am the woman who refused to die, I corrected. She didn't smile. She reached into her bag and pulled out a recorder, setting it on the tray table. Your friend here tells me a wild story, Mrs. Thorne. Poisoned wine, a ride to the woods, a confession of debt and adultery. But here is my problem. I called the precinct. Your husband is currently playing the role of the grieving widower perfectly. He has reported you missing. He is crying on cue. And without a body or a weapon, all I have is the word of a woman who disappeared for 3 days. I felt the anger flare up, hot and sharp, burning through the fog of the medication. Check the medical report, I said. Avery looked at Dr. Aris, who was standing by the window. Aris handed her a clipboard without a word. Avery read it in silence. Her eyebrows went up, just a fraction of an inch. Thiophosphate, Avery read aloud. Lethal levels. That is not a panic attack, Detective, I said, leaning forward. That is attempted murder. My husband, Elias, did this. He told me he researched it. He told me he bought it from a contact, and he told me exactly why. Money, Avery guessed, handing the clipboard back. It is always money. $500,000 in debt, Cale interjected, and a mistress who thinks she is getting a penthouse. Avery sighed, a long, weary sound that rattled in her chest. Okay, she said, I am listening. But to nail him, we need more than a toxicity report. A defense lawyer will argue you tried to kill yourself or ate bad vegetables. We need the source. We need the vial. We need the money trail. We found a storage unit, I said. He's been paying for it in secret. Avery looked at Cale. You want to toss it? We want to know what is inside, Cale said. Avery stood up and pocketed her recorder. I cannot get a warrant based on a missing person report and a private toxicology screen. Not yet. But if you happen to find something interesting in a unit that technically belongs to the community property of a marriage, well, I cannot stop you from looking. 2 hours later, Kyle returned with a manila envelope. He looked hesitant to give it to me, holding it against his chest like a shield. My guy found her, he said softly. I held out my hand. My fingers were trembling, not from the poison this time, but from a sick anticipation. I wanted to see the face of the woman my husband thought was worth killing me for. I opened the envelope and slid the photos out onto the white sheet. Her name was Kaylee. She was young, painfully, tragically young. In the first photo, she was laughing at something off camera, her head thrown back, her hair a cascade of dark curls. She wore a cheap uniform from a coffee shop, and her eyes were bright with a naive optimism that made my stomach turn. She is 22, Cale said, his voice tight. She works at the mall, lives with her mother. I stared at the girl. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to see a villain, a femme fatale with cold eyes and a cruel smile. But I just saw a child. I saw a girl who probably believed in soulmates and happy endings. He lied to her too, I whispered. I looked at a screenshot of a text message thread Cale's investigator had managed to snag. It was melted into a paragraph on the page, but the words jumped out at me. Elias had sent her a message promising that they would be together soon, that the obstacle was almost gone. She calls me the obstacle, I said, tracing the word on the paper. She doesn't know you, Cale said. She only knows the version of you Elias created, the cold, controlling shrew who doesn't understand him. It was a classic narrative. I had heard it 1,000 times in movies, but living it was a different kind of hell. Elias had built a monster out of my name to justify his own monstrosity. She thinks he is a hero, I said, pushing the photos away. She thinks he is rescuing her from poverty. She is not the enemy, Kendra, Cale said gently. She is the weapon. And if we handle this right, she is the witness who buries him. Avery didn't wait. She tracked down Kaylee's mother, a woman named Sandra, at a diner on the edge of town. Kyle went with her, leaving me connected via a secure audio line on the burner tablet. I lay in my hospital bed, listening to the static hiss of the connection, visualizing the scene. I heard the clatter of silverware and the low murmur of conversation. Then Avery's voice cut through the noise. Sandra? I am Detective Avery. We need to talk about your daughter's boyfriend. There was a pause, heavy and tense, then the sound of a chair scraping back. I told her, a woman's voice said. It was rough, tired. I told her he was trouble. A married man driving a car that costs more than my house? Nothing good comes from that. He is more than trouble, Avery said. We believe he is dangerous. I held my breath. This was the gamble. If Sandra was protective of Elias, she would call him. If she hated him, she was our way in. Dangerous how? Sandra asked. He tried to kill his wife 3 days ago, Avery said bluntly. The silence on the line stretched for 10 seconds. I could hear Sandra's breathing hitch. "No," she whispered. "He is a liar, sure, a cheat. But a killer?" "He poisoned her, Sandra," Avery said, "and he told your daughter that they would be starting a new life this week. He promised her a penthouse. He promised her a cafe. Where do you think a man deep in debt gets the money for that?" "Inheritance?" Cale's voice chimed in. "He kills the wife, gets the estate, plays the hero for Kaylee." I heard a heavy sigh, the sound of a woman who had spent her life cleaning up messes she didn't make. "Kaylee is a fool for love," Sandra said. "She thinks he is her prince. But she is not a bad girl. She doesn't know. I swear to God she doesn't know." "Then help us save her," Avery said, "before she becomes an accessory to murder." The plan to hit the storage unit was set for midnight. Cale insisted on going with his investigator, leaving me behind again. I hated the helplessness, the feeling of being a passenger in my own revenge, but I was still too weak to stand for more than 10 minutes. I monitored them through the tablet. Cale was wearing a body camera, feeding a grainy, low-light video stream directly to me. I watched the screen as they moved down the hallway of the storage facility. The concrete floor was stained with oil and dirt. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering in a way that made my headache throb. "Unit 402, Cale whispered. I saw his gloved hand reach out and touch the cold metal of the rolling door. The investigator, a shadow at the edge of the frame, worked on the padlock. There was a grinding sound, then a sharp snap. "We are in," Cale said. The door rattled as they rolled it up. I leaned closer to the screen, squinting. I expected to see a laboratory. I expected to see the vial sitting on a shelf like a trophy. Instead, I saw junk. It was a graveyard of Elias's failures. Old exercise equipment he had bought during a fitness phase and abandoned. Boxes of unsold merchandise from his failed startup 7 years ago. "Is that it?" I asked into the microphone. "Just trash?" Kyle stepped inside, sweeping the flashlight beam across the room. "Wait," he said. "Look at the corner." There was a filing cabinet tucked behind a stack of water-damaged cardboard boxes. Cale pulled the top drawer open. It wasn't locked. "Jackpot," he muttered. He pulled out a handful of papers and held them up to the camera. Even in the low light, I recognized the logos. Betting slips. Loan agreements from companies with names that sounded predatory. Notices of default. I saw a letter from a private lender. It demanded immediate payment of $80,000 or they would contact his wife. "He kept the threat letters," I whispered. "He kept them because he was terrified," Cale said, flipping through the file. "This is the motive, Kendra. It is all here." The man was drowning. He needed a lifeboat, and you were the only asset he could liquidate. "But where is the vial?" I asked. "Where is the poison?" Kyle searched the rest of the unit. They opened every box. They checked the pockets of old coats. Nothing. "It is not here," Cale said, stepping back out into the hallway. "We have the motive, but we still don't have the weapon." I lay back against the pillows, closing my eyes and visualizing my house. If I were Elias, where would I hide the thing that gave me my freedom? He wouldn't throw it away. He was too sentimental about his victories. He kept the first dollar he ever earned framed on his wall. He kept the cork from the champagne bottle we drank on our wedding night. "Think, Kendra," I told myself. "Think like a narcissist. He had poisoned me in a public restaurant because he wanted to watch. He wanted to be close to the event. He wouldn't bury the vial in the woods. He would want it close. He would want to look at it and feel powerful. The humidor." The thought popped into my head with sudden clarity. Elias didn't smoke cigars often, but he had a beautiful mahogany humidor on his desk in the home office. It was the one place I never looked because I hated the smell of tobacco. It was his private domain. "Cale," I said into the mic, "go to the house." "Are you insane?" Cale asked. "Elias could be there." "He is not," I said. I checked the security feed. The alarm is set to away mode. He is at the police station giving a statement. I just got an alert on the burner email that the security system was armed an hour ago. You have maybe 30 minutes. Cale hesitated. This is breaking and entering, Kendra. This is a felony. It is my house, I snapped. I am giving you permission to enter. The code is 4912. Go to the study, check the humidor on the desk. The drive to the house took 20 minutes. I watched the video feed as Cale pulled up to the back gate. My heart was in my throat. Seeing my own home through a shaky camera lens felt like an out-of-body experience. The garden was overgrown. The lights were off. It looked like a mausoleum. Cale punched in the code. The gate swung open. He slipped through the back door, moving quietly through the kitchen. I saw my favorite mug sitting in the sink, unwashed. It was a punch to the gut. Life had stopped, but the dishes remained. He moved to the study. The beam of the flashlight cut through the gloom, landing on the mahogany desk. "The humidor," I whispered. Kyle opened the lid. I saw rows of expensive cigars. He lifted the top tray. Underneath, nestled in the velvet lining where a humidifier should have been, was a small glass vial. It was empty, but a single drop of residue clung to the bottom. "Gotcha," Cale whispered. We had the motive. We had the weapon. Now we needed the witness. Avery brought Kaylee in the next morning. She didn't arrest her. She simply invited her for a coffee and then drove her to the station. Cale and I watched from behind the one-way mirror. I was in a wheelchair now, wrapped in a blanket, too weak to stand but too angry to stay in bed. Kaylee looked small in the metal chair. She was twisting her hands in her lap, looking around the interrogation room with wide, terrified eyes. Avery walked in and threw a file on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Your mother tells me you are a smart girl, Kaylee," Avery said, sitting down, "so I am going to treat you like one." "I didn't do anything," Kaylee said, her voice trembling. "Elias said he was getting a divorce." "That is not a crime." "Divorce is not a crime," Avery agreed, "but murder is." She opened the file and spread out the photos. Not the photos of Kaylee, but photos of me. Or rather, photos of a woman who looked like me, staged in a morgue. We had called in a favor from a coroner friend of Avery's to create a dummy file. "This is Kendra Thorne," Avery said, pointing to the photo. "She was found in the woods 3 days ago, poisoned." Kaylee stared at the photo. She put a hand over her mouth, and I saw the color drain from her face. She wasn't faking the horror. She genuinely didn't know. He said she was sick," Kaylee whispered. "He said she went to a hospital." "He lied," Avery said. "Just like he lied about the divorce. Just like he lied about the money." Avery leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He used you, Kaylee. He told us you were part of it. He said you knew. He said you wanted the money. That is a lie," Kaylee screamed, tears spilling over. "I didn't want anyone dead. I just wanted him." "Then prove it," Avery said. "Show me the messages. Show me where he promised you the world the same week his wife died." Kaylee fumbled for her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it twice. She unlocked it and slid it across the table. "Read it," she sobbed. "Read all of it. He told me it would be over by Friday. He told me we would be rich." Avery picked up the phone and scrolled. She looked at the mirror, looked right at me, and gave a subtle nod. We had him. We were huddled in the back of Avery's unmarked van, parked 2 blocks from my house. I adjusted the headphones, pressing them tight against my ears until the plastic dug into my skin. We had a warrant now, thanks to Kaylee's text messages and the residue in the vial, which meant we had a tap on Elias's phone. Avery held up a hand, signaling for silence. The line crackled. Elias Thorne speaking, his voice came through the feed, smooth and professional. "Mr. Thorne, this is Detective Miller from the Central Precinct," the officer on the line said, a role played by one of Avery's colleagues. "We have found a body matching the description of your wife." I held my breath. This was the moment. If he panicked, if he asked the wrong question, the trap would fail. "Oh, God," Elias choked out. The sound was visceral. It sounded like a man having the air punched out of him. If I didn't know he had watched me die in the dirt, I would have believed him. Is it confirmed? He asked, his voice trembling. We need a visual identification, Mr. Thorne. Can you come down to the morgue? Yes, Elias whispered. Yes, of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. The line went dead. I pulled the headphones off and looked at Cale. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was pure rage. He sounds devastated, I said. He sounds like a man whose world just ended. He is an actor, Kendra, Cale said, reaching out to steady my hand. And right now he is performing for an audience of one. He thinks he is in the clear. I looked out the window at the street where we used to walk our dog. He didn't ask how she died, I noted. A normal husband would ask what happened. He just asked if it was confirmed. He just wanted to know if the job was done. The video feed from the morgue was grainy, shot in black and white from a camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. I watched on Avery's laptop screen as Elias walked into the room. He was wearing a black suit, one I had bought him for a gala last year. He looked pale, but his posture was straight. The coroner, another one of Avery's assets, pulled back the sheet. We had used a Jane Doe, a woman who had passed away from natural causes and had no family to claim her. From a distance, with the lighting dimmed, she had my build, my hair color. It was a gamble, but a necessary one. Elias stepped forward. He looked down at the stranger's face. He stood there for a long time, staring. I watched his face closely on the screen. I saw the moment the tension left his shoulders. It was subtle, a microscopic drop in his posture. He wasn't grieving, he was relaxing. That is her, he said. That is my Kendra. He reached out and touched the dead woman's hand. She looks peaceful, he said to the detective standing next to him. She was always so stressed, always worrying about the business, about money. Maybe this is better. She can finally rest now. She doesn't have to carry the weight of the world anymore. I slammed the laptop shut. The nausea rose up in my throat, hot and acidic. He is glad I am dead, I whispered. He thinks he did me a favor. He is projecting, Avery said, taking the laptop back. He is rationalizing the murder as an act of mercy. It helps him sleep at night. He is a monster, I said. He is a man who just signed his own arrest warrant, Cale corrected. He identified the wrong body, Kendra. That proves he never looked at her face. He just saw what he wanted to see, a dead wife, an open vault. The next morning, the phone in Elias's pocket rang again. This time, it was the call he had been waiting for. I sat in Cale's office at the clinic, listening to the recording Avery had just sent over. The caller was the bank manager at Capital Trust, a woman who had managed my accounts for a decade. She had been briefed and was terrified, but she played her part. "Mr. Thorne," she said, "I was so sorry to hear about Kendra. It is a tragedy." "Thank you, Linda," Elias said. His voice was somber, but there was an underlying current of urgency. "It has been a nightmare." "I hate to bring up business at a time like this," Linda continued, "but we have the matter of the estate. The will on file names you as the sole beneficiary and executor. Given the size of the assets, we need to initiate the probate process immediately to avoid freezing the operational accounts." "Of course," Elias said. "I understand. Kendra would want the business to keep running. She would want me to step up." He paused, and I could practically hear him calculating. "When can we meet?" he asked. "Today. I have an opening at 3 o'clock, Linda said. "We can open the safe deposit box and review the trust documents." 3 is perfect, Elias said. "I will be there." He hung up. I stared at the speaker on the desk. He is in a rush," Cale observed. "He didn't even pretend to need time to mourn." "He has sharks circling," I said. "The loan sharks gave him until Friday. Today is Thursday. He needs that money in his account by tomorrow morning or they break his legs." "He is walking into a buzzsaw," Cale said grimly. A few minutes after the bank call, my burner tablet lit up. We had cloned Kaylee's phone to mirror her messages, allowing us to see everything Elias sent her in real time. A new message popped up from My Love. "It is done," the text read. "The police confirmed it. The bank is ready." I watched the screen as Kaylee, sitting in an interrogation room across town with Avery, typed the reply we had scripted for her. "Are you sure? Is it safe?" Elias replied instantly. 100%. She is gone, baby. The nightmare is over. I am meeting the bank at 3. By tonight, we will be celebrating. Pack your bags. We are going to look for that penthouse this weekend. I read the words over and over. The nightmare is over. I was the nightmare. My life, my work, my love for him. It was all just a bad dream he was waking up from. He is celebrating, I said, my voice hollow. He is planning a vacation while my body is supposedly cooling in a morgue. He is celebrating a victory he hasn't won yet, Kyle said. He stood up and walked over to me. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "Seeing him?" I looked at the text message one last time. "I am not just ready," I said. "I am looking forward to it." I spent the hour before the meeting in the bathroom of Kale's guest suite, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked different. The poison had taken 10 pounds off my frame in 4 days. My skin was pale, almost translucent. My eyes looked huge and dark, sunken into my skull. I didn't look like the powerful CEO of Thorne Assisted Living. I looked like a ghost. I applied makeup carefully, not to hide the damage, but to accentuate it. I wanted to look haunting. I wanted him to see the death he had inflicted on me. I put on a white dress. It was a sharp contrast to the black widow weeds he would be expecting. It was the color of a shroud, but also the color of a blank slate. Kyle knocked on the doorframe. "It is time," he said softly. I turned to face him. He stopped, his eyes widening slightly. "You look terrifying," he said. "Good," I replied. I walked past him, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. The fear that had paralyzed me in the woods was gone. In its place was a cold, quiet certainty. I had already died once. I had nothing left to lose. The conference room at Capital Trust was a soundproof fortress of mahogany and glass. It was located inside the main vault area, accessible only through a heavy steel door that required dual keys. We were already inside. I sat at the far end of the long table, my back to the door. The chair was high-backed, leather designed to swivel. I turned it so I was facing the wall, hidden from view when he entered. Kyle sat to my right, silent and stoic. Avery and 2 uniformed officers stood in the shadows of the corner, out of the direct line of sight. We waited. The silence in the room was heavy, pressurized. I could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock. 2:58, 2:59, 3 o'clock. I heard the heavy clank of the outer vault door unlocking. Then footsteps, confident, purposeful strides on the marble floor. "Mr. Thorne," Linda's voice said, trembling slightly. "Right this way." Room 7. "Thank you, Linda," Elias said. "I appreciate you making time for me. It has been a hard week." I heard the door handle turn. The door swung open. "Mr. Thorne," Linda said. "The documents are on the table." She didn't step in. She closed the door behind him. The latch clicked shut, sealing us in. "Hello?" Elias said. He took a few steps into the room. "Is someone here? I see chairs." I didn't move. I stared at the blank wall, counting to 3 in my head. 1, 2, 3. I spun the chair around. "Hello, Elias," I said. Elias stopped dead. The color didn't just drain from his face, it vanished, leaving him looking like gray putty. He staggered back a step, his heel catching on the carpet, and his hand flew to his chest as if his heart had physically stopped beating. "Kendra," he wheezed. His voice was a broken, strangled sound. He blinked rapidly, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand, clearly convinced he was hallucinating. He looked at the door he had just come through, but it was locked tight. He looked back at me. "You are dead," he whispered. "I saw you. I saw your body." I leaned back in the chair, crossing my legs. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at him with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining a bug under a microscope. "You saw what you wanted to see, Elias," I said calmly. "You saw a ticket to freedom. You saw $5 million in assets and a new life with a 22-year-old barista." He flinched at the mention of the money. His eyes darted around the room, finally landing on Kyle. "Sterling?" Elias said, his confusion morphing into panic. "What is he doing here? What is going on?" Then I watched the actor take the stage. It was fascinating to witness. In the span of 3 seconds, Elias forced his shock down and replaced it with a mask of overwhelming relief. Tears, actual wet tears, welled up in his eyes. His posture shifted from terrified to overcome. "Oh my God," he sobbed. "Kendra, you're alive." He lunged toward me, arms open, aiming for the embrace of a grieving husband reunited with his lost love. It was a performance worthy of an award, but the audience wasn't buying it. Kyle was out of his chair instantly. He stepped between us, planting a hand firmly on Elias's chest and shoving him back. "Do not touch her," Kyle growled. Elias stumbled back, looking wounded. "Get out of my way. That is my wife. Kendra, baby, I have been going out of my mind. The police told me you were dead. I identified the body. I was devastated." I stood up slowly. I walked around the table until I was standing next to Cale. "Devastated?" I asked softly. "Is that why you texted Kaylee 10 minutes ago to tell her to pack her bags for the penthouse?" Elias froze. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The fake tears dried up instantly. I don't know what you were talking about," he stammered. I took a step closer to him. I reached out and adjusted his tie, smoothing the silk just like I used to do before he went to his gambling dens. "You look so stressed, honey," I said, keeping my voice sickly sweet. "Your heart rate must be through the roof. You know what you always told me? That stress is a silent killer, that I needed to let go of control." "Kendra, stop," he whispered, pulling away. "I am just worried about you, Elias," I continued, relentless. "You have so much on your plate. The debts, the loans, the murder attempt. It is a lot for one man to manage. Maybe it is for the best that you won't have to worry about money anymore." "What do you mean?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "I mean the prenup stands," I said, dropping the sweetness. "I am alive, which means you get nothing. The debts are yours. The sharks are yours. And the consequences? Those are yours too." Detective Avery stepped out from the shadows in the corner. She held up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside, the small glass vial from the humidor caught the light. "Elias Thorne," she announced, her voice filling the small room. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Kendra Thorne." Elias looked at the bag. He recognized it instantly. The arrogance finally shattered, replaced by the primal fear of a trapped animal. That is not mine," he sputtered. "You planted that." "We found it in your humidor, Elias," Avery said, snapping handcuffs off her belt. "We also have the toxicity report from the clinic. We have the testimony of your girlfriend, Kaylee, who was very helpful in explaining your timeline. And we have your text messages confirming the hit." "No!" Elias screamed. He lunged for the door, slamming his shoulder against the steel. It didn't budge. He turned back, wild-eyed. "Kendra, please, it was a mistake. I was desperate. I owe people money. They were going to kill me." "And so you decided to kill me instead?" I asked. "I loved you," he yelled. "I did love you." I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "You never loved me, Elias. You told me that in the woods. You said I was just a convenient option. You said I was a lonely woman who fell for pretty words." He stared at me, realizing I remembered everything. The officers grabbed his arms, wrenching them behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut. a sound louder than a gunshot in the silent vault. "You have the right to remain silent," Avery recited. Elias looked at me one last time as they dragged him toward the door. "You are ruining me," he screamed. "You are a bitch, Kendra, a cold-hearted bitch." I smiled. "I am a CEO, Elias," I said, "and I just liquidated a toxic asset." The adrenaline crash came an hour later. I was sitting in Kale's car outside the bank, shaking so hard my teeth rattled. The reality of what I had done, of seeing the man I married dragged away in chains, finally hit me. "It is over," Kale said, handing me a water bottle. "It is going to be a circus," I said, staring at the bank entrance. "The trial, the press." "We will handle it," Kale said. "My legal team is already drafting the restraining orders and the divorce filing. We are citing attempted murder. It will be the fastest divorce in state history." The next few weeks were a blur of depositions and hearings. Elias's lawyer tried to argue for bail, but with the flight risk and the overwhelming evidence, the judge denied it. Elias was stuck in county jail, and from what I heard, the loan sharks he owed money to had contacts on the inside. He wasn't having a good time. Kaylee testified at the preliminary hearing. She couldn't look at me. She cried through the whole thing, reading the text messages aloud. I didn't hate her anymore. She was just collateral damage, another person Elias had bankrupted emotionally. When the judge banged the gavel, officially binding him over for trial, I didn't feel happy. I just felt light. The heavy blanket of his lies was gone. 3 months later, I walked into the new conference room of Sterling Thorne Healthcare. The sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sleek glass table. The merger had been finalized last week. We had combined my assisted living empire with Kyle's medical clinics to create a seamless care network. The business press called it the merger of the decade. I called it a fresh start. Kyle was already there, reviewing the quarterly projections. He looked up when I entered and his face softened. We weren't just partners anymore. We hadn't put a label on it yet. We were taking it slow, painfully slow. But the dinners were getting longer, and the conversations were drifting away from business. "Ready for the board meeting?" he asked. I sat down next to him, placing my tablet on the table. "Ready," I said. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the Department of Corrections. Elias had taken a plea deal this morning, 20 years. He would be an old man when he got out, with nothing to his name but a criminal record and a bad credit score. I swiped the notification away. "Is everything okay?" Kyle asked, watching me. I looked at him. I looked at the company we were building. I thought about the woods and the cold and the darkness. And then I thought about the light in this room. "Everything is perfect," I said. And for the first time in 7 years, I actually meant it. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.